If you watched part 1, you already know what is behind those 7 doors. You know what a man looks like when he is shackled to a table and glad to have company. You know what it sounds like when someone tells you that God prompted them to speak, and you have to decide in real time whether to believe them. But there is a person we have not talked about yet. A person who was not in that prison visiting room, a person who was not at the sentencing, a person who was not in the courtroom, not in the news coverage, not, as far as anyone can confirm, anywhere that the public eye could find her. A person who, by the time the bodies of Shanann and Bella and Celeste Watts were discovered, had already changed her phone number. Her name was Nicole Kessinger, and in the summer of 2018, while Shanann Watts was pregnant with her 3rd child, Nicole Kessinger was sleeping with her husband. This is part 2, and this one is about the woman the story almost forgot. Let's start at the beginning. Before the affair, before August, before the bodies, Nicole Kessinger was 24 years old in the summer of 2018. She worked at Anadarko Petroleum, the same oil and gas company where Christopher Watts was employed as an operator. They were co-workers. They had, by all accounts, interacted professionally before anything else happened between them, rooting out her adult life, working, dating, figuring out who she was going to be. She was also, according to people who knew her, outdoorsy, physically active, interested in the kind of life that looks good on the outside. Hikes, adventures, experiences, the kind of person who posts pictures of sunsets and means them. She had no criminal record, no history that would flag her in any database, no pattern of behavior that would have made anyone look twice. She was, in the language of true crime, a civilian. And then, sometime in June 2018, Christopher Watts told her something. He told her he was separated, that his marriage was over, that he and his wife had been drifting apart for a long time, that the relationship had been dead for months, that he was in the process of moving on, and that moving on in his framing looked very much like Nicole Kessinger. He told her this while his pregnant wife was in the house, while Bella and Celeste slept down the hall, while the family he would murder 6 weeks later was still, technically, intact. I want you to understand the architecture of the lie Christopher Watts constructed for Nicole Kessinger, because it was not a casual deception, it was not a vague omission, it was a fully built alternate reality, and she moved into it. He told her the marriage was essentially over, separated, done. He did not tell her Shanann was 15 weeks pregnant. He did not tell her they were publicly still presenting as a happy family, that Shanann was on social media documenting their lives, that the pregnancy announcement had already gone out to their community, that the Watts family, to every external eye, looked exactly like what it always had. What he gave Nicole Kessinger was a version of himself that was available. A man between lives, a man who had made a difficult decision and was now ready for something real. And she believed him. This is the part that is genuinely complicated, because the instinct when a woman is sleeping with a married man is to assign blame cleanly. She knew what she was doing. She should have checked. She should have asked harder questions, maybe. But Christopher Watts was not an amateur at managing impressions. We established that in part 1. This was a man who stood on a porch the morning after killing his family and performed grief well enough to hold off a national investigation for 36 hours. Convincing one woman that his marriage was over was, for him, probably not difficult. So she believed him. And the affair continued through June, through July, into August, right up until the morning of August 13th, when Nicole Kessinger woke up and Christopher Watts was not answering his phone. Let me walk you through what Nicole Kessinger's August 13th looked like. Not from the outside, not from the perspective of investigators or news cameras or the public who would eventually tear her apart. From the inside, from what she said happened. She had plans with Watts that day. They had talked. There was an expectation of contact. He went silent. She tried to reach him. No answer. Then more silence. Then the particular silence of a phone that is being actively ignored, or that belongs to someone who can no longer answer it because he is 40 miles away in an oil field doing something no one should ever have to imagine. And then she went online. She searched his name. What came back was not the story of a recently separated man starting a new chapter. What came back was the story of a missing woman named Shanann Watts, pregnant, the mother of 2 small children, who had last been seen leaving for a business trip and had not come home. And the husband was asking for her safe return on camera. The husband who had told Nicole Kessinger the marriage was over. The husband she had been with the night before. Nicole Kessinger did not go quiet. She did not delete her messages and disappear into the background and wait to see how it played out. She called the police. She told investigators she had been in a relationship with Christopher Watts. She told them the timeline. She told them what he had said about his marriage. She cooperated, and in doing so, she handed investigators the single most important piece of the puzzle they were missing: motive. Because a man with a secret girlfriend, a man who had been telling that girlfriend the marriage was over, is a man with a very specific reason to make the marriage over. Permanently. Here is where it gets uncomfortable, and I want to be clear, I am not making an accusation. What I am doing is laying out the facts and letting you sit with them, the way this channel always has. You are adults. You can think. Investigators, when they examined Nicole Kessinger's digital footprint, found something that did not sit cleanly with the narrative of a woman who had no idea what she was involved in. Her search history, before the murders, before Shanann went missing, before August 13th became the day that changed everything. Nicole Kessinger had searched Shanann Watts. She had looked her up. She had found the social media, the posts, the videos, the pregnancy announcements, the family photos, the version of Christopher Watts's life that was very different from the one he had described to her over the previous 6 weeks. Now, here is where the interpretation splits. One interpretation: a woman who had been told a man was separated and done with his marriage naturally. At some point, looked up the wife. Curiosity. Self-protection, the completely human need to verify the story you have been handed. She found the social media. She saw the pregnancy. She confronted him, or she didn't, but she knew before August 13th that his marriage was not what he had described. That interpretation makes her a woman who was deceived and tried to verify it on her own terms. Human. Understandable. Not a crime. The other interpretation is darker. The other interpretation asks, if she knew about the pregnancy before August 13th, what did she say to Christopher Watts when she found out? What kind of pressure, emotional, relational, existed between a man with a secret and the woman who had discovered the secret was bigger than he had admitted? We do not know. She was never charged with anything. Investigators, after extensive interviews, did not find sufficient evidence to implicate her in the planning or execution of what happened to Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and Nico. But the search history was real, and the questions it raises are real, and those questions have never been fully answered in public. Nicole Kessinger did something almost no one in her position does. She gave a media interview. In September 2018, weeks after Christopher Watts had pled guilty, weeks after the country had absorbed the full horror of what had happened in that house on Saratoga Trail, she sat down with a Denver news outlet and she talked. She said she was devastated. She said she had been deceived. She said she had no idea what Christopher Watts was capable of. She said she had genuinely believed the marriage was over. She said she cried for Shanann and the girls. She said she had already started to fear for her own safety, that the public reaction to her role in the story had been so intense, so threatening, that she was afraid. And that fear was not performative. The internet had found her. The way the internet finds people in high-profile cases methodically, mercilessly, without regard for what is actually proven and what is simply satisfying to believe. Her address had been posted, her workplace had been targeted, her family had been contacted, the public had already tried and convicted Nicole Kessinger of a crime she had not been charged with, and she sat in front of a camera anyway and told her story. Whether you believe her is a separate question from whether you understand why she did it. She was trying to establish, on record, in public, with her own words, that she was a victim of Christopher Watts' deception, not a partner in it. The interview did not fully work. The public had already made up its mind. And then she disappeared. After the interview, Nicole Kessinger did what people do when the world becomes unsafe. She changed her name. This is documented. It is not a rumor or a theory. It is a public record, the kind of record that is easy to find if you know where to look. And the internet, of course, found it. She filed for a legal name change. She was granted one, and she moved through whatever legal and logistical steps were available to her to become, as much as possible, someone the public could not locate. She dropped off social media. She left Colorado. She started over somewhere that was not the place where her name was synonymous with the worst crime story of 2018. And here is where I want to slow down, because I think the way we discuss this matters. Nicole Kessinger was never charged, she was never convicted, she was never, in any legal sense, found responsible for what happened to Shanann, Bella, Celeste, or Nico. What she was found responsible for, in the court of public opinion, which has no rules of evidence and no standard of proof, was being in the wrong bed with the wrong man at the wrong time. Is that a moral failing? Yes. Sleeping with a married man is a moral failing. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. Is it a crime? No. Is it the kind of failing that should cost a person their name, their safety, their ability to live without fear? That is a harder question. And I notice that we almost never ask it with the same intensity about the men in these situations. Christopher Watts is the one who killed his family, not Nicole Kessinger. And yet, in the geography of public rage, she sometimes occupies as much space as he does. That is worth sitting with. Now, back to the prison, back to the man behind the glass, because Christopher Watts has spoken about Nicole Kessinger, not once, not quietly, but in several contexts over the years, and what he has said about her has not always been consistent. In his initial statements to investigators, he minimized the affair. He described it as something that had happened but was not the point, not the reason, not the motive. He was not leaving Shanann for Nicole. He was not killing his family to be free to be with her. The affair was, in his early telling, adjacent to the tragedy rather than central to it. Investigators did not believe him. The public did not believe him, and in subsequent accounts, in the conversations he has had from prison, in the material that has filtered out through visitors and writers and people who have spent time with him in that visiting room, a different picture has emerged. He was in love with her, or something he experienced as love. The intoxicating, distorting, everything feels possible version of a new relationship that is especially powerful when it is secret, when it is forbidden, when it is constructed entirely outside the grinding reality of mortgage payments and pregnancy hormones and the exhausting work of maintaining a family. Nicole Kessinger represented a future that did not contain what his actual life contained, and a man who wanted that future badly enough, who wanted it so badly that he could not see any path to it that did not involve eliminating the life he currently had, is a man capable of August 13th. That is the through line investigators always believed. That is the motive hiding inside what looked on the surface like a family man asking for his family to come home. Let me ask you the question that has sat at the center of this case since the moment Nicole Kessinger's name became public. Did she know? Not, did she know about the murders? Not, did she participate in planning them? Not, Was she in that house, but in a softer, murkier, more human sense? Did she know something was wrong? Did she feel, in the way that people sometimes feel things they cannot articulate, that the situation she was in was more dangerous than she understood? She had found the social media. She had seen the pregnancy. She knew before August 13th that Christopher Watts had lied to her about the state of his marriage. What she did with that knowledge, who she told, what she said to him, what kind of conversation may or may not have happened between them after she found out, is something only two people know. One of them is in a cell in Wisconsin. The other one has a new name, and neither of them is talking about it publicly anymore. What I keep returning to is this. Shanann Watts did not know a woman named Nicole Kessinger existed. She did not know that while she was building a social media following around her marriage and her family and her pregnancy, her husband was somewhere else, building a different story for someone else's consumption. Shanann Watts went to bed on the night of August 12th, 2018, after returning from a business trip, believing her marriage was a thing she was still inside. She did not know it had been exited in every meaningful sense weeks before. She did not know that the man beside her had already, in some version of his mind, moved on. She went to sleep, and she did not wake up. Here is what the existence of Nicole Kessinger does to this case, what it has always done, and what it continues to do. It makes Christopher Watts legible. In the absence of a motive, monsters are abstract. They are incomprehensible. They are the thing you cannot understand because there is no framework, no logic, no chain of cause and effect that leads from a man to the murder of his pregnant wife and his children. But when you add Nicole Kessinger, when you add the affair, the lie, the alternate future he was constructing for himself, suddenly there is a narrative, a terrible, recognizable human narrative about a man who wanted a different life, could not find a legal way to have it. That legibility is dangerous because legibility is not the same as explanation. An explanation is not the same as excuse. Christopher Watts wanted to be with another woman. Men have wanted to be with other women for as long as there have been men. Most of them leave. Most of them have difficult, painful, costly divorces. Most of them hurt people in ways that take years to heal. Most of them do not kill their children. The affair explains nothing. It only provides the shape of a motive, a container that holds the question without answering it. Because at some point, in some moment on the night of August 12th, Christopher Watts made a decision. A decision that no desire for a new life, no affair, no intoxicating, new relationship has ever required of any other human being in the history of people wanting different things. He chose to kill them rather than leave them. That choice is not explained by Nicole Kessinger. That choice is not explained by anyone. It belongs entirely to him. Nicole Kessinger, or whoever she is now, whatever name she carries, is somewhere in the world living the life that a legal name change and a geographic relocation can provide. She is in her early 30s. She has, presumably, built something. A job, a routine, perhaps people who know her new name and do not know the old one, perhaps a life that does not begin with a Google search result, or perhaps not. Perhaps the weight of it followed her. Perhaps the version of herself that sat in a Denver news studio in September 2018 and tried to explain what happened is still present, still living just below the surface of whoever she has become. We do not know. We are unlikely to know. She has given every indication that she is done speaking publicly, done explaining, done offering herself up to a public that was never going to give her a fair hearing, regardless of what she said. And here is the complicated, honest thing I want to say about that. I understand it. I do not have to agree with every choice she made to understand that a 24-year-old woman who believed a lie, who cooperated with investigators, who gave an interview, and who was then hunted by the internet for years, that woman has probably paid something. Not what the Zuchek family has paid, not what Bella and Celeste paid, not Shanann, but something. And the question of whether that something is enough, whether it is the right kind of consequence, whether justice has any meaning in the spaces around the edges of this crime, that is a question I cannot answer for you. I can only ask it. That is part 2. In part 1, we walked through 7 doors and sat across a table from Christopher Watts. In part 2, we followed the thread that led to those doors in the first place. The woman, the lie, the alternate future that Christopher Watts wanted badly enough to destroy the one he had. We still do not have all the answers. We may never have all the answers. The search history that predated the murders, the conversations between a man and a woman that no investigator was in the room for, the moment, if there was one, when Nicole Kessinger looked at what she had found online and decided what to do with it. Those spaces remain dark, but we keep looking, because Shanann Watts was a real person who loved her daughters and was excited about her son and believed she was building a life. And Bella and Celeste were 4 and 3 years old, and Nico never got to be anything at all. And as long as those facts are true, and they will always be true, we have a reason to keep asking. Part 3 is coming. There is still more in the dark, my Kenny, and this is Secret in the Dark. Stay with us.